And welcome back to the last third part of the Linux for Dummies series, where we will finally have a look how to get Linux on a real hardware. We will not talk too much about software anymore. We'll just directly show how to get it running, because it's not always as straightforward as you might think. So, here are my notes. I'm here on LinuxMint. The last point release actually dropped just a few days. And so, what's the purpose of doing this? The first thing is to check your hardware, right? So the first thing is Wi-Fi. That can sometimes be a problem. Who knows what you're trying to run this on? Some kind of Toshiba or whatever weird laptop, or you can have some old Wi-Fi card or any type of card, right? Or even the graphics card, right? If you have a external graphics card, dedicated graphics card, that can be that all can pose certain issues. And the great thing about running Linux from a USB is that you can check many things directly on that USB. So if you have never run a system from a USB, let me just reiterate, point out the obvious, that you will get a simple USB stick, at least 4 gigabytes. We will use the same ISO we downloaded in the first part. I think it was around 2 gigabytes. So let's say 4 gigabytes, I think, is because there are not many 3 gigabyte USBs. I think 4 gigabyte is a good minimum. But if you have just lying around some fast, good performant, modern USB, like I recently bought some triple the price of a normal USB, just because it was a little bit more performant. So if you have that lying around, use that. That's gonna help. But if you just have some shitty small USB, at least 4 gigabytes, totally cool. So get that ISO from the LinuxMint page, as we saw in the first part. And the one new thing we are gonna need is how to put that ISO on that USB. We will boot into the USB. So when your PC is switched off and you switch it on, your BIOS is looking into options how to start your system, and it finds Windows on your hard drive. We will a little bit circumnavigate that and point it to the system that's going to be ready to launch from inside the USB. So your hard disk will be basically untouched almost in this process. So that's a great tool even for debugging. Even it's always good to have it's called a live USB. It's good to always have it lying around, even if you have Linux already installed, because if you break something somehow and you can't boot into the hard drive anymore, you can always go through the live USB and repair the hard drive. Potentially there is on LinuxMint, on the live USB, there is even included a repair tool. You can even access the time shift points that are saved on your hard drive. You can access them from your USB when you go to your when you boot into the USB. So that's another way how you can rescue your system if something horrible happens. But for now, let's go just through this. So you go to this Etcher website. You definitely first need to create the USB, right? So you go to this website, Etcher, Belena.io, or you just Google Etcher. There is another software that you could use to flash or burn, are the words sometimes used for putting the ISO on the USB. You can't just simply copy it. You have to use some tool like this. on LinuxMint, there is they have their own tool where you can just right-click the ISO and burn it. But on Windows, just get this, get Etcher for Windows. And I'm not gonna do this here because I'm on Linux, but trust me, this is the absolutely simplest way that I know of. There are other tools for that, but I remember even like 5 or how many years ago when I first did this, I also used this. It was very, very simple, like I think 6 years ago already. So once you get it on the USB, and I think you can find even like other videos that can show you like this, but trust me, like this GIF here is literally how the software looks. You just plug in the USB, you select the ISO, you click, then you select the ISO, and then you click do it. It does it, done. Super simple. So now you have the ready live USB. Even in your Windows Explorer, it should look like LinuxMint something. It will get that name, the drive, you know, and everything. And now you will have to find out how to boot into it. So there are 2 ways how to tell your BIOS actually what to boot into. So the simplest thing that should not the simplest, but the way that should always work is to go again inside your BIOS. As you learned in part 1, I showed even this, how to enter BIOS. I showed this before. You would look like which key gets you there. And once you're in, you will find something that looks somehow like this. You will find something like boot sequence, and you can push the order of the devices up and down. So you will simply just take the USB stick that you will find there somewhere, and you just push it up, then you save and exit, and it should boot into it probably already on that try, because this is like pre-boot, right? So if you save and exit while you put the USB higher, that should be enough. The small downside of this thing is that it's a little bit more cumbersome to go to this menu, click around, and also once you make some kind of Windows update, the Windows updates like to default this, you know, so it's quite probable that it will not stay in the order as you will leave it once you're after a few Windows updates. So it's like just a thing to be aware of. The other way how to get there, which was my preferred way when I had to do it more often, is to know they call it boot menu, like boot order menu. And I'm not sure if every BIOS has that, but on my company laptop, I think it was a Dell. I think the Dell, they have it here they say F12, so up there they said F12 or F2. Here they just not to lie, yeah, exactly, F2 or F12, and here they say just F12. So it's quite possible that F2 on a Dell will always get you to BIOS, but the F12 will also give you the option to choose what device to boot into at that moment. On the current laptop that I have right now, I tried this just a moment ago. It's a Tuxedo laptop from Tuxedo. It's like I can highly recommend that company to buy a Linux laptop when you already know that you want to only run Linux. I mean, to give them a review, that's almost like past the point of this video, but I can highly recommend them. So it's possible the boot menu order will not work for you because I couldn't find it for my laptop, but I know on some it works, and it doesn't look like the difference from the other one is that the BIOS key jumps you directly into BIOS where you see everything, like the whole screen BIOS stuff, and the boot menu thing is usually a much smaller menu where you will see just maybe 2 or 3 options. Hey, boot into typical Windows, or this, maybe it will say Ubuntu even, because the base of LinuxMint is Ubuntu, so it's possible it will say Ubuntu or Mint or something, so that will be it. And yeah, so those are the 2 ways how to get in. Once you get in, it will look just exactly like the screen we saw in part 1, where in the upper left corner you have the install icon, and at that moment, before installing anything, you should go through the typical hardware stuff. So try to connect to Wi-Fi if you use it. Try to, obviously you will immediately feel the feedback from your mouse. So that I'm also writing here that if you're, for example, used to use mouse acceleration on Windows, I remember that was a small pain point for me in the beginning. So on Mint, there's this menu that I saw recently, again changed a little bit so the unfortunate thing is to get acceleration, like dynamic acceleration, you know, as many people have it on Windows, where if you move fast, it moves the cursor farther, and if you move slowly, it moves the cursor not so far, as if you would make a sudden quick move, you know. Obviously, if you do this on a touchpad, the touchpad has this, you know, because a touchpad without that would be almost unusable. But the mouse, for some reason, on Linux Mint, I never really got this working. I also found out most people don't like it, and I also got used to not having it. I got used to having a stable distance movement with the mouse. So I'm fine with this now, but if this is new for you, I can maybe disappoint you a little bit that, so this menu before looked different and it still didn't work. Now it looks like this, where you can say constant, adaptive, and whatever is default on the hardware, I guess. And I couldn't see a difference. You know, when I say adaptive, I don't find a big difference in movement. I mean, it's like this, it's slower. So I can say this is, the constant is slower, this is bigger, but I can't really say that if I move it very slowly, I also feel like it's going faster, you know, like it's like this feels, I'm not really, maybe it's just my imagination, like you can try it. But I was testing this like before, where I was moving it a certain distance and then fast. Obviously, if you have it constant or the default, it will be the same. But if I have it adaptive, I don't feel like this is, and I'm at the end. But if I do, yeah, I mean, it feels the same, right? Like theoretically, if you do slow movement like this to the end and then you go fast the same amount, you should, or even you go fast maybe half the distance, you should get already to the end, right? So I don't know, for me this was not satisfying in the beginning, and I still don't fully understand this now, and to be honest, I don't need it luckily anymore, but that's just a thing to point out for you. Oh, and flipping keys. So this is a big thing. It's totally possible that for you, like I have here a mouse where it has a forward and backwards key. It's like I think they call it like the 5th and 6th key in like marketing things, or I don't know. But for me, the behavior was flipped, right? So if I am in like a folder and I go like, I don't know, what's let's say trash. I go to trash and now I click back. It should go back where I was, right? So these things work, but the thing, and also on websites and everything, right? But the problem for me is that the forward and backward were flipped, you know, like you imagine the forward one would be the forward one, but it was for me it felt like it's flipped. So how to fix this? It's quite easy when you know how to do it. So everything that's graphical in LinuxMint is going through it's called the graphical server, the X server, the X or graphical server. So everything you do with these things you can find out with X input. So if you run X input list, this will show you all the things that you have connected, all the like devices. You find the one with the mouse, right? Like USB optical mouse. Ah, yeah, that's probably the mouse. Yeah. So you copy the name and you write it here. I think you could even do it with the ID somehow, but I mean, for now this works. You can find out the other ways how X input testing and device identification works by yourself. If you run the test with X input, now if I just move it slightly, it shows you like already numbers, right? I think those will be like how is it called, like vertices, like the direction where you move it, right? So this can be interesting. So I'm just moving it, but if I left click, it will show you button press 1. You know, I right click, I hold it, button press 3. You leave it, release button 3. Amazing. So this, like this, you can learn which button on this device. You can do this with almost any device if you test it, right? Keyboard and whatever. You can remap many things like this. So if I forward click, it says 9. If I back click, it says 8. So I'm like, I see. So I have to flip the 8 and the 9. So I go out from this with Control C. Control C usually means cancel on all these CLI interfaces, command line. And so now that I know that it's 9 and 8 and I need to flip it, the trick how to do is with set button map. So maybe in the future, if you are a more technical type of person and you like to be in the command line more often, I would highly recommend to get the fish shell, which I run by default, and X input, tab, and I see all the options that I can have there, right? That there is test, and there is also the set button map, and that's exactly how this thing works. Set button map, you will tell it which device, and then here I flipped an 8 and 9. After I run this, you can after running this, test it again and see if it's to your liking. If it is, congratulations. And to keep this permanent, you can go to I think I have this in accession RC. So I have here even some how to call it, the localization, like it's a small hack that I used somewhere in the past. I'm not sure if I need it anymore, but maybe I wanted to have some specific things still check, even though it was British or some other language in the language settings. Anyway, here we just want to talk about this. If you put into the X session RC this line, it will basically get run on every start, and that's it. That's actually exactly what you want. Yay! Congratulations, you flipped your, remapped your keys on the mouse if they were flipped. So this is just one of many examples what can go slightly wrong, right? But on Linux, everything can be fixed. So that's flipping keys on the mouse. If you have, for example, problems with your headset or some sound things, that would be done probably with what's the word? Audio, Plex audio. I'm not 100% sure, but you could probably Google for that and find out. But the more complicated problems you find in this situation, this could easily be a deal breaker, right? For if something that straight up doesn't work, you know, like your, I don't know, your USB headset doesn't work, you know, or Bluetooth. That's another thing. So there's Bluetooth manager here. If you use Bluetooth devices, you will have to do everything through this thing. So good luck. I'm not using any Bluetooth peripherals, but yeah, I mean, you know, like okay, it found the TV of my anyway. Yeah, so see, you can find things like this, and then you can try to pair it and blah blah blah. Cool. And another thing is maybe also to mention how is it called, the colors, RGB, right? If you're some RGB color freak, it might also not work immediately exactly as you want it to. There are programs that give you the ability to change the colors on your keyboard and mouse and some peripherals. If you're lucky, I'm not using those, but let me tell you, it's possible to do it. But again, I want to say, the more crazy your setup is and the more unusual it is, the less likely it will be it's gonna just work out straight out of the box for you. Exit. I want to get rid of you. Do you exit? Exit. Yeah. Yeah. So what else to mention? RGB stuff. Wi-Fi, peripherals. Test your printers. So printers are actually surprisingly good. So again, under printers, wow, what the shocker. And you should be able to just find it, or because this caps stuff works so amazingly well on LinuxMint. Like I remember on my previous job, higher up, like a boss of mine kinda came to the room. Hey Radim, I need to quickly print this. And he had a modern Windows PC, and he's like, I couldn't connect to the network. Printer, and me, even though I was just connected through the Wi-Fi, it immediately showed me the printer, and I could print it without any issue, even though like I didn't use any setup, right? So in my personal experience, the printer, like network printers, it's amazingly well supported. Obviously, your your printer has to previously already be connected to the Wi-Fi and working on your, let's say, Windows or whatever, right? And last topic, the installation, the full-on installation. If you really want to, if everything works for you and you use it for a little bit, you went through part 2 of the video where you liked how everything works, and now you went through part 3 where again you got everything working and you really love it and you want to fully install it. Your first idea might be to dual boot. Dual boot is to install it on the same, well, to install it on the same PC and where you already have Windows, and sometimes boot into one, sometimes boot into the other one. Most people will tell you don't do it. I will also tell you that I don't recommend it, but if this is your first time and you really want to try Linux and you really are scared of deleting your Windows and everything fully, do it. But first, definitely make a backup. So it's already here, like before installation, to definitely back up everything you have on that you want to keep, that you have on Windows already. If during the installation you make any kind of mistake, you can wipe your whole drive, right? So definitely have a external backup. It's good for you even for the future in general. And but you can do it, and you also don't have to be worried that wiping in the future, the like dual booting shouldn't be because you're worried that your BIOS will get deleted or something, right? The BIOS is really totally separate, and if you totally wipe, format your hard drive, the BIOS and everything else, the booting processes and these things will be totally fine. Don't worry about that. But if for example, I totally feel you, you know, like I did the same. I felt a little bit worried, like, do I really totally nuke Windows and go full on to this one? And I dual booted for a while and it worked, you know. It's not that it doesn't work, but it doesn't work long term. Number one, the obvious thing is that Windows takes up space. But the second thing is that if you, after a while, if you have the booting process set up so that you finally boot straight up to your double booted Linux, it's gonna stay like this and it's gonna continue working. To get to that point, you might have to maybe disable things like secure boot in the BIOS. At least in the past it was like that. Again, I'm not sure these days. You will just have to try it, and if you have problems, disabling secure boot is one of the options, right? And you have to just Google for solutions based on the issue that you run into while dual booting. And even if you get to a point where it 100% works, the problem is when you go back to Windows and it tells you, hey, you didn't visit me in like maybe a week, I have a bunch of updates for you. You do a bunch of updates, and many times it happened to me that they reset again the boot sequences and made it again a hassle to go back booting into Linux. So it's a pain in the ass. I didn't like it. And when in the future you want to get rid of Windows fully, again, it's not as straightforward to just delete Windows and keep the Linux part. You know, you would have to do some partitioning, and even then, you know, then you have two partitions. Do you really want to have that? Like back then for me, I think I had it without any crazy partitioning. I think I had it just straight in one disk, if I'm not mistaken, and it works for a while. But after everything was done, I wanted to nuke the whole thing. Like I didn't want to see, touch, smell Windows ever again. And yeah, So I still had to basically format the whole drive again. So any progress you do on the double booted Linux system, it's likely that you will lose it anyway. So just to let you know, you can dual boot just to try, but don't grow too attached to that Linux system. And yeah, every time you go to Windows, it will make your life harder, because the Windows doesn't like competition. If you try to install the stuff and you already, if you try to install Linux and you already did your backups, but still some things don't work, right? So for example, you don't see the disk drive, like you have disks and you don't even see your hard disk here, like here I have a nvme partition, and I had to do this even on my company PC that previously had Windows on it. This is what you gotta do. If you have NVMe and you don't even see the hard drive on while being in the live session of the USB, you gotta go back to the BIOS and find something that's called SATA configuration or SATA mode. So this can be confusing, because if you know a little bit about SATA and what are all the other names, like you know that your NVMe is not directly connected through SATA, but still, for some reason, I'm not good enough in these things to understand why it's called SATA mode, and it influences your NVMe that's connected through the PCIe, is it called? Yeah, PCIe, I think. So even if it's through PCIe, which this M2 type of NVMe SSD has to be, right? If I'm not mistaken. Still, this is the solution. You go there, you find the SATA mode. Don't try to do this in like the drive selections. If you have drives there, don't do it through drives. You have to go to advanced. You find SATA mode, and there you switch it from RAID. If it says RAID, jing jing jing, that's the congratulations, you found the cause, and you flip it to AHCI. Is it called AHCI? Yeah, AHCI 80. So you switch it to 80, and don't be worried that you are losing on some kind of features. If you have no idea what RAID is, just forget about it. If you're curious, the short version is it's a technology how to connect several drives into one big drive space, and it's surprisingly complicated. It has several, they call it, I think, levels or layers, and it's in generally absolutely not needed. And on Linux, if you have several drives, you connect them through, they call it mounting, and if any peripheral that you connect there, it's gonna just show up on the side here somewhere, and in the tree system you will just see the tree where it is, and it's under root media, and there it's gonna just mount by default your peripherals and probably even your external drives and things like that. So it almost behaves like it's one big system, So I'm getting too deep into this RAID thing. Point is, you absolutely don't need it as a normal user. For like some big, huge company setups where you are running Linux and you want to use like one huge file space and you want to really use RAID, then you know much more about this than me, and you can like I don't know, comment into this video about all the wrong things I said, right? What I'm trying to say that the real purpose of RAID is still possible to use on Linux, but as a normal user, you absolutely don't need it. So you can just switch to AHCI and you can be totally safe, like have peace in your mind that you're not losing on any features. It's actually, it could arguably be even a downside, trying to have it run if you don't need it. So these are just a few screenshots how the thing could look like, right? And even some modern Asus BIOS with, unfortunately, French or whatever that is. Okay, so that's that. And last point, AHCI. So if you have a super new laptop with hardware that came out maybe just a few weeks or months ago and it has some new technology, it's not gonna work. Like, I think, I'm not sure if it would let you install it even. But it's slightly possible that it would let you install it, but then you couldn't get into it, you know? So the solution is to get a newer kernel. In the past, this was a little bit more complicated. In these days, if you need the first boot after install to have the new kernel, because you have a new modern graphics card, for example, and I think you could find some recommendations what to do if something is bad, so you can always look into that. And like known issues, I think it was said, like known issue. What's known issues? Known issues. How about going to the blog? We don't want to upgrade, we want to go into it, and they usually write it here. Release notes, I guess. Release notes maybe. Ah, yeah, see? So under release notes, known issues. So in the past, you had to do some crazy things during the boot to get some old graphics cards or new graphics card or whatever. You can have a look in here, but I think most of the things don't apply to most people. But you definitely can have a look here into known issues. But if your situation is as I described, that it's very new hardware, an amazing way how to solve that is by going here to all versions, and under all versions you'll be able to find this Etcher version. So because 21.3 came out like literally like 2 days ago or whatever, it's not there yet, but it's gonna be there soon. The point is that the classic one has kernel version 5.15, while the Etcher version has a much newer one. The reason the much newer 6 point something, I don't know, kernel is not here is simply that most of the testing was done on the old one, on 5.15. And if your computer doesn't need this modern stuff, you are honestly better on that older, more tested one. But this is just the way how you can get it working, right? So, great. Not every distribution is that friendly to let you install it with already newest kernel ever. If you have your system already running, this is not the only way how to get to a newer kernel. I mean, to Linux people it's almost obvious, but what I'm trying to say is that LinuxMint again is so friendly. If you, for example, get a newer hardware on an already running system and for some reason you can't get it running, one way how you can get a newer kernel here, which is like so super friendly, right? Under view Linux kernels, it will show you the version on the left, and what's available. So the newest ever possible one, if I wanted to go as new as possible, I can go to 6.5. It says it's gonna be supported only like for half a year, but I could do that if I really want to, if it's for the purpose of getting some hardware to run, if it's some super new hardware, I don't know. But 5.15 is the active one, and if it works, don't change it. But if you need to get a new one, you would simply just go install, and after the next boot, I think it will automatically choose the newest one. The reason you don't want it is, as I said, number one, theoretically it could break something, maybe, and number two, it's less supported, right? This one is going to be supported throughout the whole life of this version, and these newer ones are not so don't last as long, you know, like 5.19 is all end of life, you know, which means it's not getting updates anymore, which can create vulnerabilities in your system regarding whatever exploits, right? Although Linux is so safe, you don't need any as a normal user, you really don't need any antiviruses on that. So I think that's it. Congratulations if you got through all 3 parts, listening to everything. I would be happy if you write in a comment that you saw everything, because like when I see the analytics, like it's really interesting to see analytics on YouTube, right? It shows you so many details. Nobody watches past a few seconds, you know. And I know my videos are so long, but I really like to be thorough. So if you have any questions, write it in the comments, and feedback, comments also. And in the future, I might maybe make another video again. I'll see what's the most necessary to talk about, right? Like what maybe new Linux users might like to know and probably don't know. As I said, grsync is such a game changer. This is so amazing to know how to use, and I'm not gonna get into it now. And other things, right? Like how to set up your terminal, you know, like all these cute things, and or even the text editor that I'm using here, which is Helix. There's so many things that I could still talk about. Let me know if you're interested in anything, but I'll see. I have some slight ideas what I could do. The point is if I find the motivation and time for it. If you don't hear from me again, then thank you so much for your attention, and I really hope you find the type of freedom and liberation on Linux that I learned to appreciate so much in 2018 when I first ran and fell in love with it. It's really like this view, freedom. It's really you. This system belongs to you. You know, your keys are not locked. It's not sent to old Billy and other Google places and whatever. It's really a type of freedom that I think will be more and more necessary in the future. To like, it's not anything special. This should be normal, but we grew too used to these shackles of modernity, where everybody knows the size of my underwear, and that's just totally normal, you know, like everybody knows everything, every click, you know. Young people these days, they are like, when I was young they said don't put your identity online, right? And where did we get to? Anyway, I'm getting to a rant. I could even make rant videos as well. I wonder who would listen to it. Thanks for your attention, and enjoy your hopefully new Linux system, and ciao ciao.